Good afternoon, Eagles fans. Chris McPherson, Fran Duffy here from the Indiana Convention Center in Indianapolis, the site of the 2019 NFL Scouting Combine. If you have questions for us about what we've seen on the field, not just today as the defensive linemen and linebackers took to the turf at Lucas Oil Stadium, it could be any of the past couple days. We will take those questions here, and if we don't have time for them during the live stream, make sure to check out the Journey to the Draft podcast. But again, Fran, the biggest day in my estimation, because Howie Roseman said himself that this defensive line class can be historic, could potentially have that type of impact, and for me, did not disappoint here in Indianapolis.
Yeah, a lot of guys posted some really impressive athletic testing numbers, and even in the positional workouts, I was really impressed with some of the big names. Guys we've been talking about, guys that are all over the national broadcast. So, Nick Bosa, Quinnen Williams, Christian Wilkins, all of those guys I thought held up their end of the bargain here at Lucas Oil Stadium. I thought all of them looked really impressive today, but there were several other guys that really impressed with what they did in the positional workout as well.
Okay, Quinnen Williams, 303 pounds, runs a 4.83 official time in the 40, 1.67 10-yard split. That 4.8340, the fastest for someone, fastest by a defensive lineman 300 pounds or more in combine history, just to kind of put it in that perspective. But when you're talking about the big winners of the day, we haven't gotten the three-cone or the shuttle drill times yet, but Montez Sweat.
Yep.
Mississippi State, a defensive line record, 4.41 second 40-yard dash, and looks the part. We saw him at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama a month ago, and just holding up his end of the bargain here in Indy.
Yeah, was talked about last night on the Journey to the Draft podcast. Tony Pauline called it a mile away that Montez Sweat would blow the combine out of the water. Seems like he's done exactly that. So Montez Sweat, early returns look like he's been one of the big winners today.
All right, let's get to some of the questions here. First one, your thoughts on wide receiver Paris Campbell from Ohio State after his outstanding workout here in Indy.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this question. If you've got questions, now's the time. Send them in, and we'll keep answering them here in rapid fire before the media and the bench press gets going here just 100 feet away. But Paris Campbell's an intriguing player. Really explosive. He ran in the low 4.3s.
4.31.
Yeah, he ran pretty much as expected. I mean, he's one of the fastest players in college football the last few years. He's an outstanding athlete. The question you have about Paris Campbell is, can he be a deep threat? Obviously, physically he can, but he has never proven to be that at Ohio State. Was not used as a vertical receiver during his time with the Buckeyes, so that's a little bit of a projection. He was mostly used on jet sweeps and screen passes and shallow crosses. Wasn't an accomplished route runner over the middle of the field, so you're talking about a projection with Paris Campbell, what he can be down the road. His best football hopefully is ahead of him. If you believe that he can reach that upside, he's going to be a day 2 pick, an early day 2 pick. If you don't, then he's probably going to be more of like a mid day 3 selection. But you know how it is, Chris. Anytime a guy can run, he's going to go a little bit higher than most people project.
You can't coach speed.
No question.
At the end of the day. Another great question here. Your thoughts, another wide receiver, Clemson's Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah, Hunter Renfrow. He is a proven commodity in the slot. I mean, this guy
you know what you're getting with him.
No question. His true freshman year, he was catching touchdowns against Alabama in the national title game. I feel like he did it each year in the last 4 years. It feels like, really, honestly, that he's been at Clemson for 8 years. When you look at Hunter Renfrow, undersized, quick, shifty, reliable route runner, really good at the catch point, not explosive, not going to be a deep threat, but he is your kind of prototypical undersized slot receiver. That's Hunter Renfrow.
With him, the 40-yard dash, not tremendous. 4.59.
Wouldn't expect it. Yep.
But 6.8 in the 3-cone, 4.19 in the short shot.
I think that pretty much paints the picture.
Right
paints a picture of what he is.
Okay, let's get some more questions. Favorite second-round running back value for the Eagles?
See, I love Damian Harris, and he's a guy that I've had my eye on for the last few years. He's a 4-year starter at Alabama, right? And he's started over 50 games, but doesn't have a ton of touches. So you're talking about a guy that, he's very experienced at a high level of competition, but doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on the tires. So to me, I still think you've got plenty of tread with Damian Harris. Looking forward to the NFL. He's a tough, hard-nosed ball carrier, can work downhill, can play on third down. He's not an outstanding athlete. He's not the athlete that Josh Jacobs is. Josh Jacobs may go in the first round, but I love Damian Harris and what he brings to the table.
All right, keep those questions coming in. We love go ones here. One of the big winners from at least the 40-yard dash portion of yesterday was DK Metcalf of Ole Miss. The shuttle and 3-cone times,
not great
whatsoever. So going to be a polarizing prospect moving forward. Would you make the comparison? This is the question. Would you make a comparison to Megatron Calvin Johnson? I don't think you can really compare.
That's tough. Yeah, it's tough.
Too many receivers.
I mean, the broadcast wanted to paint him to
Julio
Jones as well. You know, I think when you look at him just from a purely straight line standpoint, yeah, sure. I mean, you're going to make those comparisons because of his size and speed combination. But look, DK Metcalf has a lot of projection as well. He's not an accomplished route runner. Comes from an offense where he really only lined up on one side of the field, and guys typically that come from that level of offense, they haven't had a ton of success so far in the NFL. You know, you look at some of these guys that have been big and fast but have questionable route running skills coming out of college in recent years, right? I mean, Laquan Treadwell, Kevin White, Brashad Perriman, the list goes on. Devontae Parker. You know, there were questions about all those guys and whether they could run routes, create separation for themselves in the NFL. I think you have to ask that about DK Metcalf. Now, that being said, none of those guys tested like Metcalf.
I was going to say, from a physicality standpoint,
a
physical tool standpoint, Metcalf is on a different level. That's why teams are going to be enamored by what he's done here.
He's going to be long gone by 25. Yeah, he'll be long gone.
All right, another one here. Any first-round linebackers. So we didn't get the chance to see the full on-field workout. The 40s have been taking place right now. We saw some of the broad jumps, but Devin White and Devin Bush, okay, arguably the top two linebackers in this draft class, putting on a show here. I
think Bush is going to be a first-round pick, and I think there was a little bit of a question of whether or not he would or not. To me, you know, he was a guy that some had questioned his athleticism coming into the week. That wasn't a concern for me. I am excited to see what the shuttles, kind of similar to the DK Metcalf discussion.
Certainly.
I am interested to see what the shuttles are, but you know, from a straight line perspective, you know, you look at Devin Bush, and he's got the ability to play sideline to sideline. I love his physicality. He's explosive. He's instinctive. He's a great player in the box, but again, can make those plays outside the numbers. Devin White's going to go top 15. He's going to be long gone before the Eagles pick at 25. But I think Devin Bush really has kind of solidified himself as being in that discussion going in the later part of round one.
Just if you look at Devin Bush's numbers here from Indy, 40.5-inch vertical, unofficial 4.44 in the 40. Absolutely outstanding here. So how about Alex Barnes and the performance that he's had here in Indianapolis? Your thoughts on the Kansas State product?
So there's three guys that I can think of right now off the top of my head. There's probably a few more that I hadn't studied coming into the week that now are like at the top of my list that I've got to study based off what I saw in the positional workout and with the athletic testing. Alex Barnes from Kansas State is absolutely one of them. Big-bodied kid, really athletic. I was really impressed with what he looked like physically. I can't wait to see what he looks like on film. Obviously tested through the roof across the board. Tristan Hill, the defensive tackle from UCF, he had one of the most impressive workouts that I saw, and that was before I knew what the testing scores were, and you told me what those were as we were walking over here.
Go through those. 9.10 in the broad, a 5.04 40-yard dash, and 1.74 10-yard split.
Yeah, those are
great
good numbers.
But looked very fluid in the positional drills.
The positional drills, I mean, he looked really, really good. So I think when you look at him, and then lastly, Miles Boykin, the wide receiver from Notre Dame, he is a player that has gotten comparisons to Calvin Johnson as well, a big kid who tested well across the board.
All right. How about Brian Burns? Speaking of defensive lineman and edge rusher, I was intrigued because you knew he was going to be one of the best testers here in Indianapolis. Just a long, linear pass rusher. Your thoughts on him from a scouting standpoint as well as what he did here in Indy?
Really crafty pass rusher. People were worried about what he would weigh in at. He came in at 249, which is still on the lighter side, but not as small as people would have expected. That was a win for him to come in at 249 pounds.
He did tell reporters that he played at around 228, so
that was a concern. You can't play at 228 in the NFL.
No.
So the fact that he came in at 249 a couple days ago and tested the way he did today, I think that's a huge win for Brian Burns. And again, you're talking about a guy that's not just an athlete, because he's a really good pass rusher, was a three-down player, a leader for that Florida State defense this past year. I asked him who the leader was of that Seminole team, and he said, hey, that's me. I mean, he was the leader of that unit. So I look at Brian Burns, and this is a guy, to me, that really, really impressed me this week here in Indianapolis.
Surprised to see Ed Oliver only do the explosive jumps here. You know, we were hoping to see the 40-yard dash.
The positional workout he didn't do.
The positional work didn't do that either, but he only did the – and look, it was great. 287 pounds, 10 feet even in the broad jump, 36 inches in the vert. So.
Yeah, and Ed Oliver, we know based off the film what kind of athlete he is. I guess we're going to wait till the pro day to kind of fill out the rest of the stat sheet there.
Another pass rusher I want to ask you about, Ben Bonogo from Texas Christian, who I thought had an outstanding workout today. 11.2 in the broad jump, 4.62 in the 40.
Yeah, he was a guy that, look, He transferred from another school to TCU, and he blew them up in 2017. He was the Pac-12 or the Big 12 newcomer of the year. He had double-digit sacks, followed that up with another strong year as a senior, went to the Senior Bowl. A little bit undersized as a pass rusher, kind of built like Burns in that he's kind of got that long linear frame. But I think when you look at this kid, you know he's got the ability to win on the outside. You want to continue to see him develop that pass rush plan. But certainly with his workout today, I think he kind of helped himself.
All right, one person who was intriguing, we saw him at the Senior Bowl about a month ago, Colin Saunders from Western Illinois. Just an explosive little bowling ball, wrecking ball, I should say. He's came in at 6 feet even, 324 pounds, but puts a 5.01 in the 40 and a 1.73 in the 10-yard split. Just tremendous footwork, so quick in and out of breaks.
Yeah, and this was a guy that gained fame because Adam Schefter tweeted out that video of him doing the backflip at over 320 pounds. Something I asked him about at the Senior Bowl, and he said, "Yeah, when I was 8 years old, I learned how to do a backflip before I weighed over 300 pounds, and I just kept doing it. And so when I'm 300 now, I'm still able to do it." So a great interview. One of the people that I think the media is definitely in love with. But Colin Saunders, high motor kid, and you mentioned the athleticism, comes from a lower level of competition, was pretty productive down there, but will be a big jump for him going to the NFL.
Indeed. I'm nowhere near 300 pounds, and I can't do a backflip whatsoever. So
not part of my repertoire.
We've talked a lot about DK Metcalf already. So how high does he go, do you think, in this draft class? Without really a top-tier dominant #1 receiver. Okay, some people think maybe A.J. Brown, his teammate from Ole Miss, Marquise Brown could be the top receiver selected in this class. But it seems like after the workout, there's going to be a lot of people who project Metcalf to go up there.
Yeah, I think with Metcalf, I mean, just because of his physical upside, and it's like we said earlier with Speed and Paris Campbell, anytime a guy comes in and runs like that, you never know. I mean, none of us talked about John Ross going top 10 a couple of years ago, and he went top 10. You just never know. Would it be a surprise for him to go #4 to Oakland? We heard Mike Mayock here first thing in the combine Wednesday morning, 9 a.m., and he said, we want to get faster, more explosive, and more dynamic at our X receiver position. They've got a guy that can fit all of those qualities that could be sitting there for them with their first pick if they decided not to go quarterback or defensive line. That wouldn't shock me. So that would, to me, would be the ceiling for, or I guess the floor for DK Metcalf.
Last question. We'll wrap things up here on the live stream. We've got a lot of questions about Andy Isabella.
Yes.
Okay. Where do you think he ends up going in the draft?
I think he's going to be a second-round pick. I think when you look at him, his film was really good. He's a good route runner. He's very small, and that's the big knock. He comes from a smaller school at UMass, but they were an independent, so that meant that they played competition up and down the coast. So they played Georgia. They played Big Ten schools. You've seen him against ACC competition. So Andy Isabella, you saw him go up against top-flight corners. He showed the ability to separate. He had like 11 catches, 12 catches against Georgia this past year. He's very reliable at the catch point. And then he tested very well. And he's not just – this isn't Hunter Renfrow where he's just quick. What do you run, 4.31?
Well, what's interesting was the unofficial time for his first run was 4.56. And a lot of people were like – This guy's not going to make it if he's going to be that small, going, not that great in terms of his time speed. But its clock was already moving.
Yeah, something got messed up.
Yeah, something got messed up, so his official ended up being 4.31.
Yeah, I mean, that's
outstanding.
On film, that shows up. I mean, this is a guy that can scoot. He can get vertical and work downfield in the vertical passing game.
Sub 7.3 cone and 4.15 in the short shuttle. So outstanding performance by him. And we saw, and the thing is, it was great because you saw him on the field against the top level of competition at the Senior Bowl, and he just adds to that here with his performance in Indianapolis. So we apologize if we didn't get to your question during this live stream. Make sure to check out the Journey to the Draft podcast later on this evening. Tony Pauline from DraftAnalyst.com is going to join us as we recap all the day's activity and everything that's going on around the NFL when it comes to the draft. For Fran Duffy, I'm Chris McPherson, signing off here from the site of the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Have a great day, everyone.